On the Daily Drive, Property Fast Track with Charles Tarbey. Thanks to Century 21. Smarter, bolder, faster. Go to century21.com.au.
Yeah, good to be here on this Monday night. Nick Bennett, Kayley Harris and Charles Tarbey. Welcome to the studio, Charles.
Thank you very much, Nick. Evening, Kayley.
Good evening, Charles. Now, just a little while ago, we were talking to Michael Brissenden from the ABC. He's got a report coming up on Four Corners tonight about the whole debt issue and how we're all debted to the eyeballs when it comes to property. In the program, a former banker says it's all about faith, blind belief that the market will always go up. Do you share that?
Do I share the belief that the market will always go up? Yeah, I do, but it doesn't go up the way we think it does. You know, people buy a property and they say, if I wait 7 years, it'll go up a certain amount. Sometimes it doesn't move at all. And then, as we've seen in the last few years, it climbs 100% in just 2 or 3 years. So I believe it goes up, but I don't think it goes up in such an easy way that we can sit and invest and expect some great result in 10 years' time. Sometimes you sit there and get nothing.
I think there's a lot of folks at the moment, particularly Sydney and Melbourne, possibly a bit of Brisbane, that have this kind of false sense of security that these levels are going to continue ad infinitum, which surely can't even be possible.
It's true. It can't be possible, and it's already in reverse in many parts of the country. It's probably more in reverse in most of the country in comparison to what we're hearing. But see, we only hear about, again, and even though I think the clearance rates are a good thing and they give you an indication, they are not the absolute means by which we test how property transactions are moving.
Yeah. Yeah, Michael mentioned that there's possibly a quarter of Australians are experiencing some kind of mortgage debt. You've been selling real estate for 40 years. Anecdotally,
sadly, it's 45, Nick. But
well, congratulations!
Yeah, thank
40
you.
Plus GST in a bit.
Yes,
so
plus New Zealand GST. It's a bit higher than Australia.
So, anecdotally, what have you observed along that 40-plus year journey?
I think we're in a pretty reasonably good spot, except for one thing. And again, I don't disagree with what he's saying, because you and I have spoken about this so many times, that if interest rates were 10%, they went to 11%. It's a modest increase. If they were 4 and they went to 5, that's a very big increase. And they can conceivably go from 4 to 6. And I think I calculated, whether I'm right or wrong, because I was wrong about that John Lennon song last time we spoke. If I calculated correctly, it's like a 41% increase if it goes from 4 to 6. Now, that means that's 41% increase in your repayments. Yeah, you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, right.
You're going to be in trouble. Yeah.
The other story around today was from Nerida Conisby from realestate.com.au. She's the chief economist.
Yes, I know Nerida, yeah.
Yep, talking about how the Chinese government is, I guess, announcing that it will restrict foreign investments. It wants to keep Chinese money in China. What impact will that have on the market?
Yeah, they've been trying to do that for a little while, because there are some parts of Australia, and in fact, if you go to South Australia, there are areas there where developers from Asia are buying certain areas just for Asian buyers. It's really quite interesting, because that state government is far more proactive because it needs more people there. So it's offered these different incentives for people to go there. The Chinese government have been concerned about this for a while. I guess it's their own fault in many respects. If you owned a property in China and you bought your second one, you needed 50% deposit. And if you bought your third one, you need to pay for it for cash, or you couldn't do anything. This is what they were doing to restrict purchase. So a lot of the Asian investors moved their money to the US, to Canada in particular. If you go to Vancouver, for example, that's a massive Asian-based city now. And we're seeing also a lot of money coming out of Asia going into Port Moresby. And Port Moresby itself has become almost another Asian city. It's grown, doubled in size in just in the last few years. So I think they're trying to stop that money from going out, and Australia is a very attractive place, and Australia will be impacted by it. There's no question about it.
Wow. Now, what about the market wrap on the weekend?
Yeah, it's a good marketplace still out there, still very strong. The clearance rates right across the region, if you take in every capital city, they were over 71%. So this time last year they were 74.6%, but so there's not a lot of difference. Our top market was Melbourne with 77.7, followed by Canberra at 75.4, and Sydney was sitting at 70.8. So still very strong clearance rates across those three capital cities. The movement's very, very good, and again, even though the agents are a bit nervous about the fact that aren't as many buyers around, they're still getting the results. So prices are still moving up.
What do you know about that?
In some of those areas.
That observation, Charles, what do you know about the fact that there's not as many buyers around? What do you put that down to?
Yeah, I think a lot of people have started to get a little bit nervous. There is a lot of negative news out there, Nick, and that's good. It's probably not negative. It's probably a bit more realistic than what's been happening.
Yeah.
And so people are getting a better view on the real estate market. And prior to that, there was this constant talk about selling over reserve prices. You're not hearing a lot of that now, but you were hearing so much of it, and everybody felt as though they were missing out. So you had this massive influx of buyers coming in and it kept pushing the prices forward. So now I'm starting to see that change, and I'm starting to enjoy watching the change, where a real estate practitioner has to work hard to put a transaction together, to put a buyer and seller together, instead of just the old ways in the last few years of just putting up a flag, auctioneer turns up, off they go, and it sells.
Bango.
Yeah.
Tom Panos we'll talk to later. He's on Sky Business with you later tonight.
Yes,
now,
he is,
Tom's out there in the burbs every week. He's an auctioneer. And he made that observation a couple of weeks back that he knows quite a few estate agents who are doing it pretty hard because they're having to work a lot harder to get stock.
Yes, I know there's so many people that are feeling bad about that.
Yeah.
Yes, they're feeling terrible. Look, as real estate practitioners, it's actually a pretty hard job. Real estate's a pretty hard job, Nick. And you're seeing, the one thing I want to tell you about real estate, I know you're going somewhere with this, but
it's okay.
One thing I'll tell you about real estate is that when you're out and about conducting your business, it's generally at somebody's home when they are home with their family and you are not. And that's one of the hardest parts about real estate, because it's very difficult to see people during work hours for them. And you've got to see them after hours on weekends. And so it's a really difficult lifestyle, and it damages a lot of people. And a lot of people don't see that side of it.
Oh, I imagine that, actually. I do see that very much so. I passed a real estate agent on the weekend and went, it's Saturday afternoon, maybe she could be at her kid's sporting event, but no, she's out at an open house.
And you often see them out there like early Saturday morning in the high heels, and they're dressed immaculately, and they're banging those open for inspection signs.
Exactly. I've
into
never worn high heels, but I know what you mean.
Oh, come on.
Are you sure about that?
Come on, mate.
I should, because of my height. But nonetheless, I'm one of those guys that looks up to everybody, Nick. But the interesting part of it is that you see that, and what you don't see is after that open for inspection and after the auction and when they're negotiating, it's still going. It's still going. And when people are out looking at a house on Saturday and they get keen on a property, they want to know about it then and there, all the way through. It just doesn't say, the open house is finished now, we can't talk to you anymore. It is an incredibly difficult profession.
I haven't bought a house for 10 years, but one of the things I didn't like about the process was you go to look at a home, an open home, and they'll insist on getting your details when you walk through the door.
Yes. Look,
can you say no?
You can say no, and I think that's changing now. That's one of the ways the industry needed to improve itself. And even so, when some agents do ask you for your details and you give them your details, you often still don't hear from them. So the new way in which real estate's being transacted, and you'll see more of it coming over the year, is when you go into an open for inspection, there'll be an opportunity for you as a buyer to enter your details if you want yourself. And if you do, you have the choice of collecting contracts, floor plans, walkthroughs, local area analysis, an automated valuation on the property if you're interested. But if you want that, you're going to have to give up some of your details.
And
but you're getting something.
That's fine.
You're getting something in return there.
That's right, but some of them would sort of almost block the pathway and say, can you put your details here? It's almost like they wouldn't let you go and look at the house unless you surrendered something. And I thought, I'm not comfortable with that.
No, it's almost
like... Because if I want to know, I'll ask for help.
You're not going to Tiffany's, are you, where there's guards standing at the front door to see whether you look like it should come in.
Yeah, that's right.
But no, it is changing, and the process is still the same, the way in which we deliver the process. Somebody asked me the other day, what's the difference between 45 years ago and today in real estate? I said, absolutely nothing is different except the way we deliver our message. So instead of a flyer, we send an electronic broadcast. Instead of a letter, we send an email. But we are still out there communicating with people. So very, very little has changed in the way in which we deliver. Instead of looking through the newspapers for our property, you search it on the internet, but you're still doing the same thing. It's just a different process.
The net's been a big changer, hasn't it? It's just so easy now to access real estate and to have intense detail attached to what you're able to have a look at.
No, it was horrible before when you're trying to search a property in the Herald, for an example, and you see all these small ads that are 10 lines. You're trying to work out what's what.
Yeah.
I watched a presentation back in 1992 when I was doing a talk for the Real Estate Institute of South Australia for the state conference. The speaker before me was on stage, and he was demonstrating how you could download a property on the internet, and he was downloading a property from Los Angeles, and it took almost his entire presentation by the time it came up on the screen.
Dial-up
hilarious.
speed.
Well, and people were looking at each other going, this
will never take
a bloody
off.
waste of time, isn't
But it is
Yeah.
brilliant. I mean, realestate.com.au domain is fantastic
Yes.
as well.
Yep.
131283 is our number tonight. Charles Tarbey, he has, as we learned, 45 years of experience in the real estate game. That includes commercial, residential, the whole lot.
It does.
What are
Property
some of the-
management, a lot of those things.
What are some of the marketing tips or tools have you seen out there? And the reason I mention it is, as I said, I bought my house 10 years ago.
Right.
Like a week ago, 10 years a week ago.
Do you want me to search the details here and find
Sure.
out how long ago you bought it?
Sure.
And what you paid for it?
Sure. And I get a letter every year on the anniversary of the purchase from the real estate
Isn't that
agent saying,
fantastic?
"Hi, just congratulations, it's now been 10 years. We've got a bottle of wine for you of your choice if you want to drop into the office and pick it up." to
Every
celebrate."
year?
Every single year for
Is it
10
the
years.
same wine?
I've never gone.
Well, that's the
Well,
same wine.
It's not really the same. I should
hope
have
it-
10 bottles
I
now.
hope it's
This
keeping
is,
well.
Now, this is the problem with this, Kayley. This is exactly what the problem has been, particularly in the last few years. Those real estate agents are doing more than most. But the real result is, and it's going that little bit extra. A lot of people hide behind emails and broadcasts and the internet. You know, have you ever thought about getting off your backside and calling into the person at their home and seeing them and chatting to them and delivering a bottle of wine?
So I wouldn't-
therein lies the difference.
I wouldn't
though.
like that.
Oh,
That's
you-
too intrusive.
Well, you've lost 10 bottles of wine in this. That's
That's
almost
right,
the
Kayley.
case.
Let me pick 'em
wouldn't.
up.
I don't
Yeah,
want 'em coming to. I don't want
look,
anyone coming to my house.
Give them our address.
Yeah.
Tell them you've moved to our address, but you're going to rent that one
So
out
it-
soon.
We'll have a party.
Are many real estate agents doing things like that?
A lot of agents are very proactive in their marketing, but my concern in the last few years is that the generation that's come through is definitely hiding behind emails.
Yeah, I agree.
And so on. And instead of picking up the phone and calling somebody, just saying
Yeah.
hi. I think that's a big issue. One of the other things I find too with a bottle of wine, which I try to get away from, is that when you drink a bottle of wine, you know that you do that up against a wall, it's gone. I think there needs to be a bit more than a bottle of wine. I think
Like
it's
a
something
fridge
that's a bit
magnet or
more-
something.
Well, maybe a plant. There might be a lovely tree that they plant at the front of your home
Yeah.
that
That's
good.
recognises your property.
Did you see the story around the weekend where Gen Ys in capital cities are relying on inheritances to buy property? That's their only hope, is if they inherit.
Look, yes, I think that's probably the case for a lot of people. I know my children aren't waiting, which is lovely, but I got them into the market early. I got them in the market 10 years ago. And I think they can get in the market, and I think you can use mum and dad's equity. I think there are issues with that, with banks still. But, I don't think there's anything wrong with getting family support.
Another way to do it is rent vesting. We'll have a look at that in a
Yeah,
minute and
yes.
also go around the grounds. But a caller from Eastern Creek in New South Wales. Peter, good evening. How can we help you?
Yes, hi. I've got a unit in Yagoona. The guy wants to sell it for $190,000. It's a one-bedroom, 40 square meters. Is it a good buy, or what do you guys reckon? It's been currently rented for $225 a week.
It would be an older apartment?
In Yagoona, New South Wales.
Yeah, I know where Yagoona is. I just wondered, is it an older apartment, though? Because that's an old area.
It's about 9 years old.
Yeah, okay. Yagoona was one of the areas that came up under the massive land scam in the 50s, where people were buying land there and they were asked if there was town water, and the salespeople were getting pipes and taps from the local hardware and sticking them into the ground.
Seriously?
I guess it became a very serious issue. That's a great area to buy in. It's not that far really nowadays from the city. You're just only a couple of kilometres away from the entrance to the freeway, down through Bankstown, that can take you straight into the city. $190 sounds a very, very low price. Although it's 40 square metres, you might have some issues in borrowing money with that. So some of the banks don't like to lend on properties that small in size, but it certainly is in a good area.
In a good area,
Yeah.
and the strata is about $200 a quarter.
Yeah, that's nothing. That's absolutely nothing.
Sounds good. I'd buy
Sounds
it.
good.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, guys.
I'd love to see a bit more, and if you want to leave some details, I'm happy to talk to you about a bit more and give you more of an automated valuation on properties in that area. That's not a problem. It only takes a couple of minutes. I'm going to do that for Kayley shortly on her
great.
property.
Don't forget, Peter, that advice is general in nature and may not suit your circumstances. So before we all rush in and tell Peter to go and buy the property, we just got to be a bit careful that we...
I keep forgetting I'm not a financial... I'm not a financial advisor. I've got to stop that.
But fair enough, that is true. General advice here. And I think we found a home for Sam, though.
Yeah, Sam could go.
Yeah, I reckon Sam would be good there.
Yeah.
13 12 83 is the number tonight. Charles Tarbey is here taking your calls. All things real estate still ahead. Yes, rent vesting when you're single. That can be a way for people to get into the market, can't it? If you can't afford to buy, you maybe rent first and then invest in another state. I think it's quite common.
The rule of thumb is really simple. Live where you can afford. Live where you want to live and buy where you can afford. A lot of people try to buy where they want to live, where they can't afford, and that's where they get into trouble. So if you need to live in a certain area of Sydney, rent there if you can't afford to buy, but for heaven's sake, invest in something where you're going to get some capital growth, even if it's 20 or 30 or 50 kilometres away from where you are.
We'll find out more in a minute with Christine Williams.
On the Daily Drive, Property Fast Track for Century 21. Smarter, bolder, faster. Go to century21.com.au.
There are some great advantages in being the world's largest real estate company. For a start, your Century 21 local office uses the best technology and knowledge base in the world. Combined with the fact that each office is independently owned and operated, your local Century 21 agent knows your city, your suburb, your town and your street. It also means Century 21 agents can offer a huge range of resources and experience, including information from over 300 offices around the country. It's no surprise Century 21 is the fastest growing real estate brand in Australia. Buying, selling or looking for a new home to rent? Contact your local Century 21 office and find out why they really are smarter, bolder, faster. Visit century21.com.au. Property Fast Track tonight it is. Charles Tarbey's here taking your calls on 13 12 83. Lots of folks find themselves single at a point in their lives where they hadn't planned on being single. And when you're in this position, trying to get by on one wage, investing in a property portfolio, might seem like it's out of reach. This isn't the case, according to Christine Williams, principal at Smarter Property Investing. Rent vesting is an investment strategy which allows you to rent where you want to live and buy where you can afford. And if you do it right, you can build successful portfolio all on your Pat Malone. Christine Williams joins us on Property Fast Track. Hi, Christine.
Hi guys, how are you going? Thank you for having me on.
It's a pleasure. So tell us about 20 years ago. You suddenly found yourself divorced, yet you managed to build an investment property portfolio.
Yes, that's correct. So one of the most important things to me at that particular time was making sure that my girls, two teenager girls, were staying in the community that they'd grown up in and staying in the schools that they were currently at with their friends and so forth. And of course, when you buy out or get bought out, perhaps in a property settlement, and you're only got 50% or less or a little bit more, it's very hard to rebuy in the area that you've just sold in. So to me, it was more important to keep kids in school, and I just started renting in that area. And of course, I had a pocket full of money that was just sitting in the bank and didn't really know what to do with it. And of course, having one of the great Australian dreams to get your own property, that kept on playing on my mind. And I suppose I sort of lucked into rent vesting. I decided to park my money in a property. I was reading property magazines and I was reading property books, and I decided to park it. And in that, I started rent vesting, and it wasn't even a word 20 odd years ago, but it is now. And from there, it just catapulted into cash flow, being able to go into other investments, predominantly investment properties, and eventually I've built a property portfolio.
Things have changed radically, particularly in Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane, compared to what you experienced 20 years ago. Do you think you could do the same thing today with the success you've had?
Yes, I do. I really do. And the reason why I say that is because I have quite a number of clients that have either come out of a broken up relationship or are still currently single. And, they still have the liabilities that a couple may have if they have children, or even as an individual. So I'm helping people allow them to live where they want to live, and that could be, cafe district, closer to where they work, or they have children close to where they school, and I get them to invest in areas other than where they are living, perhaps not even in the same state, to invest in property where they can afford to invest and get them to catapult from there. You know, I've got, clients that are going into their third, fourth and fifth property just by reinvesting.
So how far away generally, you're talking about buying out of the capital cities or just maybe buying in different capital cities, for example, Adelaide or Perth compared to Sydney, or buying in regional areas, or what do we think?
Very good question, and the answer to that question is yes. Specifically, I've never personally invested in Perth or Adelaide myself. However, I've invested in every other state and territory. And at the moment, you are right. The Sydney market and the Melbourne market is extremely hot, and I would call it they're in boom. But there are even areas in both of those capital cities, suburbs within those areas. Yes, they're out of the 25, 45K ring, but you can start investing. So it may be a regional area within that state, or it could be a pocket that's just been a sleepy hollow that has never had anyone interested in it. However, infrastructure is being built around it. So, yes, I very much put clients on the eastern seaboard, Sydney, Brisbane and Melbourne, and regional areas within those states as well.
Maybe those in-between places, Charles, that you often speak about.
Yeah, back to those again. And I think a lot of the regional areas, especially right now, are getting the growth that they normally don't have. They don't have that strong growth on a consistent basis like the capital cities do, so it is harder to get into the capital cities. But the regional areas, they're starting now because they're getting the flow on from the equity people have gained. And so there's some, if anybody's got properties outside of Sydney or outside of Melbourne or outside of Brisbane, they're going to do very well over the next 6 to 12 months. They're still filtering out that way.
Christine,
I agree wholeheartedly.
How important is it for your investment property to be positively geared?
Well, growing an investment property strategy to me is having a balanced property portfolio. So in the beginning, it may be negatively cash flowed, or in the beginning, it may be positively cash flowed. And that really depends on the type of dwelling that you purchase, and as much as taxation or tax deductions should be taken into consideration. I only ever use them as a bonus. So is it important to be positive? Well, I believe eventually your portfolio should be positive, but, there are in a lot of cases that you can't start off that way. But I see as, putting $100 a week into a property is actually investing $100 a week into your future. So having a balanced portfolio in the end is what I call the ultimate goal, and to me that's neutral. So one property will be costing you X amount per week, but the other property should be making you something similar. And it can be done. You can build a property portfolio that way if you know your cash flow and if you know your goals.
Christine, I figure a lot of folks, I know many, who are renting because they have to. They're yet to be homeowners. They desperately want to be, and they're struggling to save money to put together a deposit. How do you do that? In fact, I know of one person who is doing that, and guess what? He's in a relationship. He saves all of his money, lives off his wife's. So how do you do it?
How do you do it?
In today's with considering things and the way that life is today.
Look, very good question again. But I think if we think about, I'm an investment property strategist and I'm about building an investment property portfolio. Yes, I do have my own home now, but of course decades have gone past and I do have that. However, if we're thinking about building a property portfolio, to me the end goal should be the thing that we're thinking about. And if the end goal is for an income stream or to cash it in and actually have cash and put into your super, I see property as an income-bearing asset class, and it's an investment class that just grows up in value. But how do you get a deposit? Well, I think you need to understand banking policy at the moment. And, if perhaps we're thinking about a $500,000 property, yes, that's $50,000 deposit on a 10% deposit on a 90% lend. Of course, you do have to pay mortgage insurance because that's what our policy is all about. But if $50,000 seems out of your reach, well, then they should be thinking about things around the $350,000 mark. And it can happen. So $35,000, if we have got, someone that's on $80,000 or even $100,000, this is a 5-year plan, and you will still be able to get properties around the $500,000 mark in the next 3 to 5 years in the right areas. They will be regional, but it's a step in the right direction. And guys, we're living a lot longer, so we're working a lot longer. So, 20 or 30 years in the workforce will eventually get you there.
Christine, that some of the areas around Melbourne and Adelaide and Brisbane, you're still going to be able to get a good property for $350 to $450 still in those areas outside of the city, but not even regional. So some of them are still out there. I think, if you've noted, a lot of people, they want to live and buy a house where it's their dream area, and this is where the problems start.
Yes, it is where the problem starts, because I think they forget that it can be a stepping stone. So, yes, have your goal about where you want to end up, but then think about what you need to put in place to eventually get there. So it is stepping stones. We can't have. I think we have to forget that we want what we want without thinking about there's a process.
Yeah.
We live in a McDonald's age where we expect things yesterday. So it's a stepping stone, and it can happen.
That's good advice. Keep your eye on the prize. Christine Williams, thank you so much. Principal at Smarter Property Investing. Thanks for your time tonight.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Property Fast Track it is. Charles Tarbey's here and taking your calls, 13 12 83, or maybe if you'd like to be a little quieter about it, you can email by clicking feedback. That's the icon at talkinglifestyle.com.au. In a moment, we'll go around the grounds and have a look into South Australia. You mentioned Adelaide before. Have a look at Mount Barker. Mount Barker is a ripper spot.
Yeah, we're going to go to a little special spot of South Australia.
I like Mount Barker.
Mount Barker. And we're also going to go to somewhere completely opposite.
Fantastic. Maroubra. Well, let's go to Jim, who's on the phone now, 13 12 83 in Concord, New South Wales. Jim, how can we help you?
Yeah, hi. Been listening to Christine and you guys. Thanks so much. If you've got $600,000, would you buy a one-bedder in, say, Summer Hill, Dulwich Hill, or would you buy a block of land or a house for $600? You wouldn't be able to get anything past the Blue Mountains Plus. We've all been in the game over the next 10 years.
I'm not a great investor in just land alone, because if you bought a block of land and borrowed another $400,000 and built on it, that $400,000 mortgage will get taken care of by the rent. And now you've got, say, $1 million property getting capital gain rather than $600,000. That's just a basic theory. But there are still areas in the Hebersham, Mount Druitt, Darrick areas where you can still buy a property for under $600,000. And I've encouraged people to go there because of the access to freeways and shops and so on. But of course, Summer Hill, great area. It's getting up to the top of the tree now in terms of pricing, but there's still a supply issue in that area which is keeping the prices strong.
So in the next 10 years, that one better versus the Hebersham property, what would you recommend?
I know that sounds silly, but I actually believe that the Hebersham property will increase more in value. The reason I say that is if you go north of Hebersham, or if you go east of Hebersham, or if you even go west towards Penrith, all those properties in that area, they're starting at $750 plus. They're already over that price of that little pocket that people have a tendency to forget because it is hidden, but it is an area that people have gone away from that I think has got more growth potential than most parts of Sydney nowadays.
All right. It's an interesting one, Charles, because in 2027 we'll talk again.
I know. It is funny, isn't it? Because I really do see those properties and I think, wow, just north, just like 3 or 4 kilometres north, people are paying $600,000-700,000 for a block of land.
Yeah.
Good on you. Thanks, Jim. Thanks for the
Jim.
call.
Don't forget to call me, Jim. Don't forget to call.
You send him a bottle of wine before.
I'll get Kayley, the one that Kayley gives up. We'll send it out to Jim.
Absolutely.
Around the grounds next.
On the Daily Drive, Property Fast Track for Century 21. Smarter, bolder, faster. Go to century21.com.au.
Time to go around the grounds thanks to Century 21's extensive national network of real estate agents. It's always interesting to get a snapshot of a particular region and learn a bit more about the area with the help of a boots-on-the-ground local expert.
And Paps is here. Nick Pappas from Century 21 Maroubra. Hello, Nick.
Yes, Mr. Pappas.
Hi, guys. How are you?
Now, this young man is one of our leading real estate practitioners, and he has a wonderful business at Maroubra, a great team energy out there, and he made it up into the top of the tree worldwide, in the top 20 worldwide out of 110,000 salespeople. We've had a handful of them in the top 10, top 20, and Nick Pappas is one of those people.
Good on you, Nick. Tell us about Maroubra. Tell us about Maroubra. What's unique about it?
I think what most people love about Maroubra is it's one of those coastal suburbs that hasn't been completely overdeveloped yet, so it still has that nice coastal feeling to it. Yet you're still very close to the Sydney CBD. universities, great local hospitals and some great schools. So I think that's what makes it very popular amongst the people that do come into the area and, tend to fall in love with it quite easily.
One of those places, I would imagine, Nick, given your experience in selling there for a while, it's been gentrified. Hasn't always been that desirable, probably, more in recent times.
Look, I think what tends to happen is that you're sort of seeing prices going up along the east coast there. So you're seeing Bondi, Bronte, Clovelly, Coogee, and I think Maroubra was always one of those suburbs that people thought had a bit of housing commission and it'll never change. But I think as these other suburbs progressed and prices became unaffordable in those suburbs, we're seeing suburbs like Maroubra, Maxwellville, Chifley that are now getting over and above $2 million just as a median house price. So it's quite interesting that you said that, because we are noticing people moving from the suburbs into Maroubra and sort of realising what they've been missing out on for so long.
Nick, there are some suburbs not too far away from you that today fall into the same category as Maroubra fell into, just as you described. People go, oh, no, I won't go there. It's a little bit of housing commission, or it's too close to the airport, or it's this. And these are the suburbs we talk about that people seem to overlook. You hear about the Bondis, the Bondi Junctions, or the Bondi Beaches, and everybody at Coogee, and people go there, and they forget these great suburbs. You've got absolutely everything that these other suburbs have, and you have something even more than that, and that is you have a little bit more privacy and peace than some of these other centred suburbs or around the beaches.
Well, you've got parking, which is cheap for a lot of people.
There's a great selling point in the east of Sydney, for sure. So let's talk about your stock and prices. Nicholas, stock levels right now, what are they like?
Stock levels have come off a bit again. We did see a little bit of an increase in stock levels, but they've come back off again. Our option success rate, like personally for myself, over the last 3 weeks has been at 100%. So we are seeing many buyers coming back into the market. I think people are being very diligent on how they're spending their money, but I think when they see value, they do see it and do make the most of it. But I think we're getting more buyers in our marketplace again, because stock levels have dropped off a little bit again.
Nick, what attracted you to the area? I mean, you officially started your real estate career in Fairfield. I mean, that's a completely different area compared to where you are now. You're highly successful in that area, and you made the transition from there to Maroubra. What made you do that?
Look, for me, it was more around lifestyle, but as I got to live in the local area, I just realised, I suppose how many great things it had to offer. And I thought, it's very affordable for where you are. Like, you're living in one of, I do believe Maroubra Beach is one of the best beaches in Sydney. You're only probably, 15, 20-minute bus ride into the Sydney CBD. You've got Randwick Hospital, the Children's Hospital, the Women's Hospital. They're pretty much within, a 5 to 10 minute, sort of car ride. And then you've also got the other beautiful places around you, like Bondi and Coogee, that are all within, like a very short drive away. So I really just fell in love with the lifestyle around the property. Like, I suppose in Maroubra, and the fact that it wasn't overdeveloped and you could still have a nice, relaxed lifestyle.
And I've had some pretty good pizzas and Mediterranean fare there over the years too.
Yes, there is.
Yeah.
It's very multicultural, let me tell you.
Good on you, Nick.
I say nearly as much as Fairfield.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Next up is Anthony Coleman.
Thank you, Nick.
He's from Century 21 Mount Barker. G'day, Anthony. How are you?
Hello, going well, thanks.
Tell us about Mount Barker. Where is it in relation to the CBD?
So Mount Barker is approximately 33 k's from Adelaide CBD, so just up the southeastern freeway.
And Anthony, that would have to be one of the best freeways in the country, without a doubt.
Oh, definitely.
It is an absolute rip snorter. Like, where else can you live and be in the hills and be into the CBD within 20, 25 minutes? It's an extraordinary place.
I've missed that freeway a couple of times. I found myself out the back of the Barossa
Cooper
Valley by
Pedy.
mistake. Somewhere, I don't know how I ended up there, but I did end up going the wrong way.
It's a beautiful bit of infrastructure, which was probably only finished about, a decade ago?
I think it was about 2000.
Yeah, all right, a bit more now.
So what's the what are we looking at? What's there? I mean, what's the population? There's obviously schools and shopping centres, and what's great about Mount Barker?
Currently 14,000 residents in Mount Barker. There's numerous public schools and private schools, so for primary and secondary. So some good options in that respect. What else can I tell you?
Well, you get a bit of snow. Had any snow this year?
Maybe at Mount Lofty.
Mount Lofty.
Quite at Mount Barker. I don't think we've quite got the elevation for it, unfortunately.
All right.
A lot of young families, Anthony?
It would be predominantly young families, yeah.
Okay, and are there units there or mostly homes or a bit of both?
Average property in Mount Barker would be 3 and 4 bedroom homes, 600 square metres to 1,000 square metres. We do have some units, community and strata title, but predominantly Torrens title, single-storey dwellings.
And Anthony, you notice the market's moving your way stronger and stronger out of Adelaide. There are more and more people now buying and lifting the prices in the area.
Oh, definitely. Demand is fairly strong. Probably the biggest thing that's going on in the area at the moment is the availability of land.
Yeah.
So a few years ago, there was 1,300 hectares that had been rezoned by the state government. And, over the next 10 years, we're expecting the population to double.
They're a very proactive state government, the SA government. As you know, they've launched a couple of suburbs. The guys down at Salisbury, as you know, Anthony, have had entire suburbs that they've got for sale that the government's been building.
Absolutely.
So, Anthony, if you wanted...
A lot of growth there.
I'm sorry, mate, go on again.
Mount Barker's going through a lot of growth in that respect.
Okay. If you wanted to maintain a lifestyle outside of the city of Adelaide, this would be a perfect spot, wouldn't it?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it seems that in comparison to values, when you consider the direction of growth at the moment, the options are you either go up north towards Salisbury and Elizabeth and Gawler, you go south towards sort of Noarlunga and beyond, or you come up to the Adelaide Hills. And at the moment, the Adelaide Hills is getting a lot of attention.
And you've got a train service to the CBD?
Unfortunately not. No, we have got in Mount Barker 2 what we call as park and ride. So they're big bus stations essentially where you can park your car, jump on a bus and go straight down to Adelaide. But unfortunately we do not have a train that goes straight from Mount Barker to Adelaide.
All right, but plenty of other good things to be had.
Absolutely. Probably the biggest thing is, well, like the previous gentleman was saying, it's all about the lifestyle. Still affordable. There's plenty of facilities available. To be able to have a country town which is so close to Adelaide, I think is the key part.
Well, Anthony, congratulations on your success in the area, and thank you very, very much for taking out some time to talk to us this evening.
Pleasure.
Thanks, Anthony. We'll be back to do the auctioneer wrap with Tom Panos.
On the Daily Drive, Property Fast Track for Century 21. Smarter, bolder, faster. Go to century21.com.au.
13 12 83 is the number tonight. Charles Tarbey here to take your calls and discuss real estate with you. We always have a chat to auctioneer Tom Panos on a Monday night. He knows his stuff. Good evening, Tom.
Good evening, gentlemen. How are you?
We're good.
Tom,
we've got Kayley as well.
We've got Kayley here as well.
Yes, and lady. Hello, Tom.
Hello, Kayley. I only heard the two names. Sorry, I'm in Darwin actually. I've come over to speak to a real estate conference here in Darwin, and I've quickly ducked out of where I was. So, Kayley, I apologise.
Oh, good.
No
You're
problem.
forgiven now.
No problem at all. First home buyer activity was down 4.5% this month, even after the New South Wales government introduced a range of measures to stimulate first-time buyer activity. Is it too little, too late, do you think, Tom?
Look, I think that marketplace, I actually did an auction, and Charles, you'd be very surprised. I was out in a place called Wayland, which is Mount Druitt.
We were just talking about that, yes?
Yeah. So I did an auction there. Look, it was hard work. It was a 3-bedroom house. It eventually sold for $546,000. I think I think that the clearance rate, it is definitely harder out west. I'm not saying you can't get yourself good properties out there if you're a buyer, but I do notice that when the market changes, it is a very sensitive market out there. It's a price-sensitive market out west. And the question is it too little, too late? I think the answer to that will remain in September. I don't want to answer it now because September is going to be a massive month. I'm looking at it. It's all, every auction is booked out. It's going to be massive. Yeah,
I'm with you on that. It takes a while for this stuff to kick in, doesn't it?
It does. And I mean, like even next week is a very busy month. There was a great saying, and it is when the sample size is 1, the stats don't matter. And I'm not saying the sample size is 1, but I mean, I think what we need to do is look at, large volumes before you start, interpreting it. And I think that we're beginning to see those large volumes. So I think that if we're having these conversations in a month's time and we're seeing clearance rates at around, 60%, I think the answer is probably yes.
So, Tom, in Melbourne, listings were up over the same weekend last year. Where do you think some of the best value in Melbourne lies?
Look, I love that the Doncaster area. I love Hume area. I love Knox, Glen Waverley. All those areas there, I think, are outstanding. At the moment, I've got to say, I like all of Melbourne, and I've never been a major supporter of Melbourne. It's, when you live an auction in Sydney and that's what you see and that's where my, main office is, but I can't help it. Agents just keep telling me, Melbourne, I think, up year on year, 16% in price growth.
Yeah, it's a pretty easy place to love.
It's definitely is, and it's an area that, along with Canberra, Tom, that has experienced most of the growth this year and continues to. And as you know, Melbourne is the auction capital of Australia.
Thank you, Tom.
Tom, just before you go, mate, just tell us about Brisbane, mate. It seems like it's hard going in the Sunshine State.
But the weather's good.
Yeah, the weather's real good.
Look, look. I've got to say, Brisbane's had a good run over the last year or two. I'm seeing consistent clearance rates of under 50%. And Charles will tell you, Brisbane is a place that it's always been a grind. It goes through cycles where things are good, and I just think that we can never compare a clearance rate from Brisbane to that of Sydney and Melbourne. But for people out there that can't afford, other parts of Australia that want employment, that want a good climate, I definitely still have Brisbane on the radar screen.
Tom Panos, thanks for your time. We can see yourself and Charles Tarbey tonight on Sky Business News. Thanks for joining us, mate.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
All right, mate. We'll see you tomorrow, Kayley. Thanks for your time.
See you. Bye-bye.